Fellow Variety family members, welcome and thank you for joining the tent talk of Variety International 101, Section 3. Stacy Bruce hosted Section 1, covering history and impact. Nancy Cleater, our intrepid president, hosted Section 2, covering organization, constitution, and structure. This section will cover the final section, Section 3 of the document. And again, don't forget everyone, this is version 1, and as such is very much a living and breathing document that we intend to update as time goes on. We will cover briefly explanation of what the federated model is, our family collaboration and communication. You're probably going to hear the word family a lot today, and that is intentional. We'll talk about our global partnerships as well as our strategic plan. Now, a bit about me. The image of this cornered hat is kind of indicative of kind of what I do. The crown of the hat, though, is Variety, the children's charity. Now, my CV certainly is on the Variety website. And as noted, it's 3 corners. I try very hard to reference the perspective and the comments that I'm making based upon which corner of the hat is facing forward at any one time. In the end, though, we each wear the Variety, the children's charity hat. Now, I got involved with Tent 17 back in 2007 through the company that I work for, Cinemark Theaters, in raising money for Tent 17 and the Gold Hearts sales campaign. I joined the board about 6 years ago and was elected my first term of chairman a bit over 2 years ago and was re-elected chairman just on our last meeting a few weeks back. I also am on the board of Variety International, and because I can't show all 3 sides at the same time, my USB brow or corner of the hat is at the back. I'm also a dad, and I'm also a grandpa. Speaking from the perspective of kids in general, a couple of my favorite quotes. One from Nelson Mandela, and that is how societies treat their children is indicative of the quality and the character of that society. But also John Kennedy talking about how kids represent our future. And for us trying to help kids have a future and a participation in the future, that's what we're all dedicated to do. Now, I will be using the VI 101 deck as the basis and the structure for the tent talk. So as I had indicated earlier, we'll talk about mission, collaboration, communications, best practices. So our vision, and Stacy certainly, as well as Nancy had talked about it, is on the screen. Now, it's my slide 5, and I'm not quite sure in the main deck what slide it is. And each of us representing entities within the global Variety organization, be it a regional council, national association, each of our tents, we each have unique vision, mission, and value statements relevant for our jurisdictions and territories. Now, personally, as far as VI is concerned, I love the core values that are stated here because we do transform kids' lives. We help them to fit in. We respect everyone, the kids we help certainly, but also those with whom we work. We are very inclusive, and we have to be by definition. We are trying to help kids fit in a society that maybe they struggle for any number of different reasons, be it developmental or be it physical. We certainly have compassion for what we do, especially those of us that are volunteers. We do so because it's in our heart. We also try very hard to be very transparent, and I love that word because it talks about honesty and it talks about being forthright. So a bit on the index, as I indicated, we'll talk about the federated model, and this directly is, and I put this slide in indicating that there's 99 pages to this. And I'm hoping everybody has had an opportunity over the weeks to dive in rather than eating the whole thing all at once in one big sitting. It's kind of like this is a 3-course meal, but maybe a 7-course meal, where maybe the last few pages that are covered was at the very end. And maybe not the dessert necessarily, but at least it's the end of the meal. So what is a federated model? And Nancy talked real briefly in section 2 on our Constitution, which was ratified and updated back in 2015. Briefly, a nonprofit federated organization has a central organization with a minimum of 2 or more local organizations. Now we, for Variety, the children's charity. We as a global charity have 3 core programs. Our first one is CARES, that's for medical equipment. We have our Freedom program, which is all about mobility, adaptive bicycles, adaptive trikes, helping kids get around. And we have Future, communications equipment, education programs, and the access there too. So a federated model, again, is a central organization, Variety the children's charity, with a minimum of 2 or more organizations. Now, us, we have 3 regions: the North American, the European, and the Asia Pacific. We also have a couple of associations. We have the US Association and we have the Australian Association. And then we have 44 tents kind of sprinkled out throughout the regions. So that's kind of what a federated model is. Central organization with other smaller organizations, all with the same mission. The cool thing we have in our federated model is communicating what we do. The collaboration. We are the family of the children's charities, helping folks get the help they need through the 3 different programs, but also sharing our success stories. Now, Variety International does this in a number of different ways. We have our monthly newsletters where we're sharing information. It is exactly what it says. It's a newsletter. We talk about 10 successes, information that is needed, important key dates for folks to have and put on their calendars, even during the pandemic, obviously. And Lord, I hope this is all in our rearview mirrors very soon. Even we then provided, because we have a number of tents, several dozen, obviously, a couple dozen in the United States. There are several government programs that were available to charities, the payroll protection program, varying grants, etc. So we shared information and links with them in those newsletters. Now I'm hoping everybody that is on the call received this particular one. This is this month. It was sent out on the 8th of September. Great things. Remember task force update, talk about the AGM for next year. If anybody is not a recipient of this newsletter, make sure that you let Sharon know so that you can be added to that list. Newsletters are critical. They're absolutely critical to sharing information. In addition to that, we also have what we're doing today, a TED Talk, explaining and having in a very Brady Bunch sort of way, a conversation. And we're sharing information. We have a nice slide deck, and we have information that we're sharing for folks. We had some literally just right after the pandemic hit everybody. So we had virtual fundraising part 1 and 2 in April of 2020. And then we all thought, in fact, even with the company that I work for, the length of the pandemic is probably triple plus what any of us had anticipated back in March of 2020, when we realized that we were in a pandemic and just not a bad flu season. We all had to adapt. We all had to figure out how best to survive in a very uncertain world. So our next one was in March of 2021, wonderfully handled by Calais Weston out of Western Canada. And then an amazing one that Janelle Mitchell, VI's treasurer, hosted. I'm hoping everybody had that. I think, Sharon, if I'm not mistaken, it was recorded, the financial and physical fitness tent talk. It was amazing. We also have town halls. These are semi-annual. We had one in March 17, 18 of 20, and another one in August. We had scheduled one for March of 2021, but obviously we had to suspend that because we are without an executive director and we're at the beginning of the year for a number of reasons, and we'll get into those in just a couple of moments. Now, the cool thing is we have asked for and have received a number of ideas for future tent talks. And these are just a brief example of some of the things that people have said, these would be helpful for us. So we now, as a board, and are considering all of these. We've done virtual fundraising, board development, succession planning has been talked about, reinstituting and reconstituting Young Variety. At the end of the day, these are all resources that folks have asked for, that Variety International is going to commit to looking very seriously at to figure out how we exchange successes and ideas so that we can all be better. We all want very much to work together. Sometimes the challenge is, especially in stressful times, coming from a large family, incidentally, I'm one of 8 children. Certainly there can be tensions at times and different perspectives, and our organization, our federated organization, probably really is no different. We also have two additional modes of communication and collaboration. That is our annual general meeting. Our last one, obviously, that hopefully everybody was well attended, was virtual. As will next year's. We certainly have some travel restrictions in certain parts of the globe, which will make it very difficult for people to commit to an in-person annual general meeting. And certainly we all recognize the financial struggles that all the tents, all the association, and all the regional councils, as well as BI, are under. So an in-person annual general meeting for 22, it just isn't a responsible thing to try to force people into doing. So there we are, and we have the international conference. So each tent has its meetings and calls. Each country association has its meetings and calls. The regional councils do also. It's how we share our stories. All of these are how we share our stories. Yes, the pandemic has forced us to find new ways to communicate. I'm still learning Zoom because my company uses Teams, but hopefully I think I practiced enough with Zooms. There hasn't been any hitches yet. We're only 15 minutes in. I am going to keep my fingers crossed that we will continue with no glitches. And these have had to replace in-person meetings, and they feel a little odd. Social media channels continually evolve, and they evolve our messaging and our storytelling, the how that we tell and share our stories internally, but also externally. And it is so different than even just a few years ago. We were all just websites not long ago, and now we have all of these, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. We have all of the different things, and Moore's law has been proven over and over again. It's basically that technology and the computing cycles of computers double every year or every 2 years. So the devices and the modality of communications in the coming years, they probably haven't even invented yet. So we will have to adapt on figuring out how to tell our story of how we help kids and how we collaborate as those come out. And that is a very important thing for us. So there is some innovation that is coming. Now, we have an innovation award. Nancy talked about it real briefly in section 2, and I really think this is an important thing. We have all had to innovate in the environment in which we find ourselves. And I like the fact that we, Variety International, has had an award celebrating innovation. And it's to celebrate something that has been done new and or differently that might be able to be leveraged. And all of Variety, all of us, have to be dedicated to sharing those great ideas that we have in our individual jurisdictions, and then send it up so that other people can look and see it, and that we can leverage those to help more kids, not just the ones in our jurisdiction. Someone else might have a spark that says, I could do that. I might have to tweak something, but that is awesome. That is why we want to recognize and reward the sharing of that. We want to leverage that. Variety, all stripes, shapes, colors, sizes. We're all stakeholders in the mission of helping kids. Now, the Collaboration Award is my favorite, I think, of all of them, because that then rewards those folks that are working together. And this is a cool one. I'll give you a couple of examples, real brief ones. During a USB board meeting a few months back, Roland was talking about a cool thing that's happening in Variety of Florida, Tint 70. And as Chief Barker and the representative for Tint 17, I got to thinking about that. You know what? The University of Central Florida, working with Variety of Florida on that program, that's cool. There's no reason why Stacy and I shouldn't be looking at that at 17, because the University of Texas, Texas A&M, Rice, Texas Tech, any number of major universities are very close to our office in Austin, but even more have that same mission, especially through their social department in those organizations. It's like, okay, so I am working with Marshall Cohen, my counterpart with 70. That's the collaboration. I know Stacy, I'm looking at you, Stacy, I'm pointing at you, you're off to the side, so I apologize. She had a great dialogue with Neil Weitz back earlier part of the year, and understanding the rolled up financial impact documents and working together to figure out how to get that done and taken care of. So that collaboration, we need very much as an organization to be dedicated to doing that. We've all in this pandemic have kind of held our resources close to the vest because we didn't know how long this was going to last. We didn't know how long our money was going to last. We're hopefully getting beyond a bit, and we can then get back to working together. I mean, if you look at the word collaboration, just look at it. And I tend to be accused of being a bit of a wordy sort of person. Collaboration means working together on a shared project or goal. I mean, that's right out of Webster's dictionary. And if you break the word down, it has two Latin roots: work and labor. And in the end, it's we who collaborate with each other. We listen, probably have to read, we ask questions, we follow up, we interact, and then we take and adapt, and we execute again to help kids. So I love this award because this celebrates family members working together. So let's cover some global partnerships real briefly. As I indicated early on, I got involved with Variety in a very real way. I mean, it goes back even earlier in my career. I'm in my 48th year in the movie theater business. I started my 48th year. No shaking of heads. I see everybody shaking their heads. No, yes. I was only 14, so yes, I am 62. I'll be 63 in a couple of weeks. My mentor was very philanthropic. His two favorite charities that were in a 14-year-old's mind were helping kids, both through Variety as well as Will Rogers was his other favorite one. But our Gold Hearts program, in its current form started back in 1991, as Nancy indicated in her section. Now through 19, we raised about 25 million, little north, a little south, depending upon the foreign currency exchange rates. And as you can see on the slide, the very bottom left, Minions, that theme pin, was our high water mark, a little over $2.5 million. It was quite the surprise for all of us. I was very happy and very proud of the organization Cinemark, because we raised about 1.2 of that, maybe just a little north, shared obviously throughout the tints in the United States. And I have to admit, humbly, I'm very eagerly waiting in anticipation the 2022 pin, because it is also a Minions themed pin, the Minions Rise of Gru. With the movie theater industry coming back, I am very excited. I don't know if we'll get to the 2 million plus, but you know what? I'm going to reach for the stars. I think we're still awaiting the Trolls World Tour figures to be rolled up. I'm not quite sure what that process is. I know a lot of folks still have to report. And this year was a bit of a surprise. We weren't sure, because we're still in the pandemic and most of the pins are sold through movie theaters. Movie theaters have been impacted by the pandemic hugely. We had a pin that our phenomenal friends from Universal Pictures, on very short notice, came up with Boss Babies 2. And I think we're nearing, just Cinemark alone is nearing over $100,000 in pin sales, when we expected and budgeted none. The pin property was very surprising, and I love the graphics that we were able to produce through the Universal folks. It's kids being helped. So we're anxiously awaiting, obviously, the Gold Hearts pin campaign is a legacy campaign. And as I said, the 2022 hopefully will get us back into the double comma figure for sales. We also have Golden Link, and this is variety logoed items that we had hoped to sell, masks especially for pandemic, as people needed those to get out and about and interact with folks. Again, theaters closed, long story, sad story, true story, boring story at this point. Sales were a bit lighter than we hoped. I think we got just a little south of $1,700 that was distributed, but the Golden Link folks are great partners, and we continue to work with them, trying to figure out how maybe we can come up with something for a program that we will be able to use in the coming months. Overworld, and Nancy talked about it a bit also in section 2. This is a app based on mobile devices game. One of the features therein is a variety logoed house. We've got a differently abled character that is unable to bounce around with her friends, and so is able only to do that with a wheelchair. So we're very much looking forward to some very solid results from Overworld. We hope it is successful. I love the fact that it talks about how kids interact with each other, and regardless of abilities, they are able still to associate. We're working on a new program, and I'm very excited about this. It is originally called Hometown Heroes, but in working with a number of folks on the committee, as well as an amazing partner, advertising and philanthropically minded Johnson & Seacon, and Skylar Treppel out of Southern California. The committee has worked very hard and continues to evolve. So we were Hometown Heroes, we're now Hometown Champions. Especially kids who are differently able, physically, sometimes maybe even developmentally challenged. Being a champion is a cool thing. Everybody wants to be a champion. So the committee's still working on the product. We've got elements that we're continuing to tweak in the program, including a playbook, which will be presented to everyone on how to implement it. We're going to beta test it. Our hope had been that it was going to be this summer. And I don't know if we've got anybody on the southern hemisphere. It would be their spring or actually winter. But I think everybody is on north of the equator on the call as I'm looking around. So our hope is that the test is coming up. I know we're still working on changing up the logo from Hometown Hero to Hometown Champions. The nice thing about the program is we truly believe it is applicable. While we are starting with two sports, the NBA and the NHL, the National Hockey League here in North America, we truly believe that this is, depending upon if we have any Europeans, football real football versus soccer, what we in the United States call it. But it also could be any other sport. Now, it is a home athlete whose hometown where they grew up is in one area, and that is where the hometown champion is part of. Now, there's a secondary possibility that we could even get them involved in the secondary tent of where their team that they're associated with plays. And these are athletes that are up and comers, not necessarily the top tier athletes who are making millions and millions and millions of dollars a year. This is for folks that are kind of on the way up and maybe even in the sunset of their career who want to get associated with the children's charity. And as I indicated, this is a very exciting program. I'm personally very excited about it. It easily, in my opinion, could be a legacy program. And again, because it doesn't have to be about a sport that we've listed and we're going to start with. It could even be a sport. It could be golf. It could be tennis. It could be anything based upon a notable athlete in your tent's jurisdiction with a hometown there that we bring back home and have help us there. It's a very, very exciting program. Okay, now on to some challenges and our strategic plan. It was fun doing research for this tent talk. I did a lot of extra reading, even stuff material before the current Constitution was passed and enacted on varying strategic plans for Variety International, and some of them were phenomenal. Stacy had even indicated in some early, in her section 1, some of the amazing heroes that had been identified, the Simon Cowells and the Winston Churchills, organizing events that were absolutely headline making. Well, we're not in that mode right now. We're all in survival mode. But I have hope. I'm serious. I have hope that the survival strategy we're now implementing will get us back to that wonderful, hopeful, strategic, longer term 3 to 5 year plan where we will get back and be as important and as notable as we were back in some earlier years. So our strategic plan for the Variety International office has been obviously survival. We had to figure out how to raise more money. We were able to get, and again, the PPP is a U.S. federal government program, payroll protection plan. We were able to get loans 1 and 2. We were able to get a state grant out of the state of California where the VI office is. So that's on the money side. We also had to make some tough choices on the expense side. We vacated the executive director position. We had to by necessity when virtually the entire country, the entire world was shut down and or under quarantine. We had to make some tough choices. We continue to live with those tough choices because that's the responsible thing to do that organizations make. A shout out to Sharon, our only paid staffer, doing yeoman's work, multiple yeomen, graciously, cheerfully, smile, Sharon. I'm looking at you. There you go. She has such a sweet smile and very capably. It is amazing. Our intrepid president, as I had indicated before, Nancy Clear, who is fulfilling most of the duties of a paid ED, at least in the job description of it, and also doing tireless work. Those of us on the board, we're on multiple committees. We're doing the best we can to get us through. Doing as much as we can with less and less, but still sharing our family stories, our newsletters, our tent talks, etc. And it's very, very important that we continue to do so. Sharing stories continues to build the bonds of our relationship with each other. Now, certainly the AGM that we talked about real briefly before had some very interesting and tense moments, I guess, maybe that's about the best word, but families, when they confront reality and confront needs, sometimes they do have to have some hard conversations. And that one was. That was my first AGM, so that's the paradigm from which I will look at all future AGMs. From that, we certainly had a number of resolutions that were put forth and issues that were discussed. And some of the resolutions were adopted and some were tabled for later. The upshot of which was obviously a task force that John Dennis out of Australia is very capably leading. I've been copied in on a number of things, and it is amazing how he has, and obviously the membership is interesting. And if you think about the time zones required to get folks together, much of what he has been able to do has been bits on the east, bits in the central, and bits in the west as you look at the globe and its time zones. So we have membership, 2/10 from Canada, 2 from Europe, 3 from Asia, and 5 from the United States. Now, there is an open position from the United States, and Erica Lopez, I'm not sure, I don't think Roland ever appointed or was able to get another person from that. So the US currently has 4 active, but 5 slots were there. The intent, obviously, of the task force was to create the dialogue, to understand the perspectives of what people felt, some of the history and some of which I didn't even know, but in doing a lot of research on different conversations that have been had, different things that were discussed at varying AGMs in Europe or in the United States, we want the organization to be better. We want the family to work efficiently. We are a federated model, so by definition, that's what we are. As a consequence, we have to work together. And that involves listening. That involves very honest, transparent dialogue so that we A, understand, and B, address what the needs of the tents are. And it's interesting, if you look at the different ones, we've got Hong Kong, we've got Australia, we've got Manitoba, we've got Israel, Ireland, Texas, Iowa, Buffalo. The needs in each of those tents are different. So we're trying very hard to understand what the needs are for the organization so that we can, in fact, address the issues. Now, John, and with his permission, I offer this, and this obviously was the note that he sent out to his folks. He is a phenomenal and capable individual. He is kind, he is organized, he is erudite, he is a strategic thinker whose heart is a children's charity's heart. So obviously we have a number of things that we're going to look into. I'm not going to go through the resolutions. That's not the purpose of this talk, which obviously is just to finish up the VI 101 deck. But I hope everybody on the call understand that, and turning my hat around the VI International, we heard, we're listening, we're asking questions, and we're planning. And we need and want the organization to work together, collaboratively, respectfully, with goals in mind of helping kids. Wrapping up, I'm going to offer a couple of quotes. And I love these images from the deck. And with honors to Lisa Creed and Michael Nasser, personally, I do myself believe that children are our future. And our responsibility is to teach them well, especially those kids that struggle with the ability to fit in, because they have abilities. We just have to help them develop them and get them out. But show them that they matter and that they have beauty. Give them a sense of pride. That is what we do. That's our dedication. And I love this also, and again, kind of having my grandpa hat on. I got to take my variety hat on, put my grandpa hat on. My wife and I were talking about this just a little bit ago. We've got a grandson now that is coming to visit us next week from Holland. And it's going to be awesome to be able to hold my now 6-month-old grandson. But I love this quote from John Kennedy. Kids are our living messages that we send into the future. When my grandson's name's Ryan, when he's 30 or 40, unless I live to be over 100, he's going to be experiencing and being an adult and being a contributing member of society long after, in a time that I won't even see. So I'm going to work very hard to make sure anything I impart, and even more, and even bigger for us, all of the kids that we help, that's our job. And I love this one too from Mr. Rogers. And I don't know how many people actually saw Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. But some things about play, a lot of people think it's more relief. It's like, okay, I'm taking a break and I'm just going to go have fun. No, not for some kids. Play is actually learning. And learning how to play. And learning how to play with others. That is some work, especially for kids. And think about the kids that we help and how they play, and how maybe they don't get to play as much as ably-bodied, verbally minded kids. We help these kids, and that's our job. Now, I stole this last slide from Stacy. This is baby Catherine. We in Variety, the Variety family. I love the note that was pinned to baby Catherine, who at 4 weeks old was left in the theater on one cold December night in December of 1928. And it implored, look after her. Joan, we are. In 44 tents in a dozen countries. We got it. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes a bit earlier, a little faster than I had intended, and I apologize, but I am more than willing to either A, give you 20 minutes, 19 minutes of your life back, or entertain any questions. Fortunately, Nancy's on too, and so if there's any specific and technical questions, I will defer to her. Again, my board tenure with the VI board started officially just in May at the AGM, although I had been on a year before as an appointment. So, and Sharon, I don't know if you need then to open mics or everybody can do that on their own.
Yeah, they can do it on their own.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Well, I just have a comment that, Steve, I think you've just proven yourself to be the MC of our next Texan of the Year Gala.
Nice audition.
Perfect audition. Skylar, Courtney, that's our MC. We're set. Thank you. That was awesome, Steve. It was beautiful.
Yes, thank you. There's a lot of food for thought in there for all of us. And I am extremely proud to be part of the Variety family with people like all of you. So thank you.
Great job, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you. I love that picture. Joan's smile. I wish I would have been able to meet her. I know she left us in '94. We have Mike Merlick, incidentally. One of Joan's children is on the Texas board. So we are doubly blessed. We are doubly blessed. Well, if there are no other questions, and I don't see anything in the chat, you, Sharon?
No, I don't see anything either.
All right. Well, if there are no other additional questions, as I indicated, we'll give you 15 minutes of your life back.
Thank you, guys.
Steve, that was
Steve.
great.
Thank you.